To me, minimalism is when there's a constraint put upon you. What constraints do very much is open you up. Minimalism is being constrained and then intelligently overcoming that constraint. If you have everything, where would you put it?
To be ultra creative and to really tap into that, you have to be in like that boring zone a little bit. Sometimes just having the free will and all the choice of all the time in the world to do it means that it's never going to get done.
When you decide you have to cut, hell is winning every time at roulette. Everybody's an expert until it's heavy.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the show and thank you for joining me. So the guest I have today needs absolutely no introduction in the strength and conditioning world. Coach Dan John is back with me on the podcast. Coach is one of my favorite people to talk to. I've got a chance to learn from him in person as well as speak to him multiple times on the podcast. And we've had some of the best conversations, and this one is absolutely no different. He is the author of many books, including Easy Strength, Never Let Go, his newer book, 40 Years with a Whistle, which we got a chance to chat with last time. His book, Never Let Go, is still one of my favorite books I've ever read in my life, not just in strength and conditioning, but just overall. And it was just a blast to reconnect with Dan again. A varied amount of topics that we went into, specifically regarding minimalism training and what that actually means. So I know you'll get a ton out of this. You always do when you get a chance to listen to Coach Dan. So enjoy it. Have a great time. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll catch you on the inside.
And we're back. Coach, welcome back to the show. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you. It felt like it was years.
I know, right?
So much. I just.
But you haven't aged today.
I was staring out the window a lot. People say, "What's wrong?" I don't want to talk about it. I don't want. It's too soon.
Well, thank you so much. Welcome back. It's always great to talk to. And I got to tell you, the last podcast that we did got a lot of great feedback from a lot of people. And I thought it was one of the most fun conversations that I had, because we dove into a little bit of strength, but talked a lot about writing, about just kind of life skills as well. And it was really eye-opening, and it was awesome. So
right.
It was great feedback on there. And well, I've talked to you many times, so a lot of times this is like a framework in a conversation rather than an interview, but there are a few kind of topics that I want to dive into you with.
Let's do this. Yeah.
So one of the things it's been on my mind, and I think you've talked about it quite a bit too, is the topic of minimalism. We've talked about it a lot, especially in the communities that we've been in. And it's a great concept. I understand it, but like many things, I think it gets misunderstood and misconstrued by a lot of ways. And somebody put out actually a message of what is minimalism, and the definitions that were coming through were on both sides of the aisle, like so much. I was like, okay, I'm like, this is something that we need to, let's agree to a definition a little bit. So when you think of minimalism, like what comes to your mind? Like, how would you describe it first?
Well, so first, I don't believe in minimalism just to do it. So when I've got all these books behind me and a whole bunch of them are like, just do these 2 exercises. And it's like, well, what if I have 5 hours to train? That takes 8 minutes. So here's what I do, Mike, and it's important. So I've done this for way too long, but it's called the prisoner's dilemma. And for whatever reason, for you, because you're such a heroic young man, it's for political purposes. You're only allowed to train for your number one goal 3 15-minute bouts a week.
Okay.
So whatever you now pick, you can't say, well, I'm going to do, I want to be a great power lifter, so I'll do yoga for my joint health. Well, that means then you'd never get your goal because you never lift. Mm-hmm. And, you wouldn't go, are you going to warm up? You have 15 minutes. What kind of warm up you can do? Well, none. So when I first thought about this and I liked it, I thought to myself, well, I guess I would do, as a discus thrower, overhead squats, snatches, and then I would take a power ball or something and do full turns into a wall. Mm-hmm. And so maybe 20 turns, a set of snatches, 20 turns, a set of overhead squats, 20 turns, clean and press. So what minimalism to me is, there is an exterior restriction on what's going on. And because of that restriction, that artificial one like I just gave you, or a true one, like, all you have is a 28 kilo kettlebell.
Right.
So what are you going to do? To me, that's what minimalism is. So to me, minimalism is when there's a constraint put upon you. The best training, in fact, almost all of my great coaching insights. I love how I say that. All of my great coaching insights, as if, folks, I'm not going to waste my time.
I love how you stare into the heavens on that as well, too. Like you are bringing it from the gods above. So
I'm not even going to give you guys the above average ones, just the great ones. Happened when I had 2 middle school daughters, and I had 2 full-time jobs, a professor and an administrator. I made them breakfast and dinner every day. I helped them with every homework assignment. I kept a clean house, and I still trained at an international level during this time because I knew I couldn't do everything, but what I could do was, but that's where the loaded carries come from. And that is where easy strength's roots are from. And
right.
That's where some of the numbers, like, instead of doing 1,000, 20 sets of 2 in the Olympic snatch, I do 6. I do 6 single. And so for me, minimalism is when you have a constraint. Now, it can be equipment, like we just said, only kettlebells, or only barbells, or only your body. A local park with a what do you call it? The playground. A playground.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a bar too. Yeah.
Yeah, and you got monkey bars and a pull-up bar. Well, you can get all your dreams come true with that, or you just have a beach. Whatever it is. There's an external constraint, and you overcome that constraint by using your brain and your creativity and your will to train, and that is all it is.
Okay. So I love how you broke it down of like if you only had those 15-minute blocks a day, because the first thing that came to my mind is, okay, I'm going to really focus in these 15 minutes.
There you go.
Yeah.
So minimalism to me is much more focused thinking than it is just trying to get away with, well, here's 2 exercises, do them, master them, and get back to me, which, by the way, rarely works. Olympic lifting is a very minimalist. I think Olympic lift, you snatch and you clean and jerk. There. Right. That is a great program. All your dreams will come true if you snatch and clean and jerk and go for a walk every day. Now, there's other issues there, of course, but so to me, that's where minimalism is. And I didn't mean to jump so quickly back in, but yeah.
Well, I think that's it, because I was going through those different definitions that everybody was jumping in on, and I was like, I think what you mentioned there was the big thing, was the desired result. It's like, because everybody, the minimum effective dose. It's like, yeah, well, if you get the minimum effective dose, you're going to get minimum results. It's like, but if you have a bigger goal, your minimum effective dose is going to be much different than the next person down the line.
Right. Well, we talk about the MED all the time in my world, because it also lends you to a much better training program. So, for example, if I said, and let's just make it you can't do more than 25 reps per movement in a workout. That's the law. It is now the UN passed it, and it's our overlords from Mars have said that's it. So whatever it is, and I had you do 3 sets of 8 in the push, 3 sets of 8 in the pull, 3 sets of 8 in the hinge, 3 sets of 8 in the squat, and then you did loaded carries. You have a very good program.
Right.
So the MED for hypertrophy is about 15 to 30 reps in a workout total. 3 sets of 8, 3 sets of 10, 5 by 5. If you stick to that, good things still will happen to you. So the minimum effective dose can be really good. The problem is, we're just such squirrel.
I was going to say, is that where most people go kind of off on the minimalist? It's just the monkey mind that starts going in, and the fear of missing out, where it's like, oh, if I add this in now, then this will be great. Where you put the constraints in of like, no, you're only allowed to do this. So it's kind of like just giving a court. It's like, yeah, you can dribble as much as you want, but you got to stay within these out of bounds lines. Now all of a sudden you're playing basketball.
Exactly. Exactly. Think of how much different I don't know if you ever played ultimate frisbee, or they don't call it frisbee. They call it ultimate now. But when you play ultimate, how much better you get at controlling the flight of your frisbee, because by having constraints, you have to do small little things.
Yes.
And I think that is, so now a good question would be, and the gentle listener just raised her hand and said, well, but I want to train minimalist. I want to try to do just the MED and walk out the door. And I would argue you're going to have more success than 95% of the people you'll ever meet in your life. So this comes, of course, I was a teacher at Catholic schools they gave me an award for 35 years of service. So you can do the math. And my good friend, Chris Long, always explains to the parents and the students that a school uniform doesn't constrict you. It opens you up. I can't tell if you're poor, rich, middle, all you can be. What makes you leap out is you. Now, certainly you can unbutton your shirt down and, you can hike the skirt up, and you can, not wear a belt and have your underwear show as you walk down the hall, and you can do little things like that. But basically it's kind of stupid, because what constraints do very much is open you up. And what that's one of the reasons I don't know if you notice it in my writing, but very often I will come up with artificial constraints to make me think smarter. My entire Easy Strength for Fat Loss program is based on constraints. A lot of my Olympic lifting programs are based on constraints, and I learned, like a lot of guys, when I first came up, our squat racks were terrible. They were just, you would never slam a weight into the early squat racks. The squat rack would fall to the ground. And then you would have this, 405 pounds in your back. You'd have to figure out what the hell to do with it, So what I like to do when I have 405, I just would behind the neck press it, bring it down to my chest. And then, that's a joke. But if you have really unbalanced, very small, very thin squat racks, you put the weight in. So I do my set of 3. And now when I put the weight in, I go in slowly and I control this side down, make sure it's in. Well, that's a lot of extra work that you're not going to get if you just, or like some of the systems, you just walk away from the squat now. You just stand up and walk away, and it sits right there. So sometimes constraint, say for the next month, you can only work out, but you have to work out every day, but for only 15 minutes. Artificial constraint.
It's interesting you talk about that with the racks, because I was thinking too, like with the squat racks, that's forces you that you can't put so much weight on there that you can't control. So you
artificial constraint.
Exactly. And there was a guy, James Fuller, that I've spoken with before. He's the strongman archaeologist, old-time strongman, and he's always looking at those different types of exercise that look a little bit crazy when you think, but a lot of times it's like, putting the bar on the side and then going under it, the Steinborn. Like these, like things like that, like you have to master that weight. Like you can't put extra weight on the bar and then go into progressive overload that you're not ready for. It's like you have to master that movement. And that's the constraint right there. So you're always working with a less weight to build this up, which leads over time. And it's so funny because I talked the same thing with Jerzy Gregorek last week when he was talking about Olympic lifting.
Hey, how's he doing?
Jerzy's the best. He was an absolute blast to talk to. So
I've only met him twice, I think, but he's just,
Well, he told me a story about that, because we were talking about, his term he uses, micro progressions, which is really a, incremental steps of building, work, and his work in Olympic lifting. He went to his coach a while back and said, okay, well, you give me 10 years and I can make you a great lifter. Where most programs are 6 weeks to 12 weeks and we're going to transform your whole life. He's like, 10 years down the line. And You said, I think the same thing from Ralph Mahn, which is like, lift 3 days a week, throw 4 times a week and do it for 8 years. It's like,
right.
Well, make sure you don't forget that last part of that statement. It's like,
Dick Notmeyer, when we asked Dick about anabolics, because, it was that conversation comes up and Dick was adamantly against anabolics, and God bless him because I didn't get involved. So it was a good thing. And he said, here's the thing, Danny, in 2 years, okay, so anabolics is going to just boom. And it's going to give you 2 years of progress in about 6 weeks. But here's the thing. In 2 years, training with me, you'll be at that same spot, but you'll also have all the lessons of those 2 years. Mm-hmm. You'll have all the knowledge of those 2 years. If you increase, and there are people who are absolute responders, it's expected, I was told this by a Soviet one time, that when you start on anabolics, you improve 10 meters. You were expected to improve 10 meters. I mean, how much better of a career would I have had if, yeah. I mean, that's, by the way, folks, that's that's a million miles.
Wow.
But Dick Notmeyer's point was always this, is that, I'm 65 now, and the lessons I learned in those 2 years are still in my head. Right. I couldn't tell you about a 6-week period in junior college or high school, but I can tell you the lessons of 2 years. So that would be number one. So for me, minimalism is being constrained and then intelligently overcoming that constraint.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, when's the time, if you have more just equipment or you don't need those constraints, do you think that's even maybe a better approach for a lot of people to go in of just try a lot of different things and kind of see what sticks for them?
Here's what I've seen throughout my career. In fact, I had a good conversation with an Olympian. It was Saturday, and we were talking about how when people go down to Chula Vista, that's where we do our, I don't know if it's still going on, but that's where our elite throwers all went down. And once you went down to Chula Vista, where they were getting the 3-dimensional biomechanical studies of you, you're in a cafeteria setting, you had a world-class weight room, world-class throwing facilities. These guys used to bitch about the throwing facilities at every meet, saying their training center was better. And my thought, follow my thought. Now I'm like, follow the thought. Their training center was better than the meet conditions. Their weight room was better than anything I had. Somebody else was making them 3 to 4 meals a day. Very rarely did they improve down in Chula Vista.
Really?
In fact, a lot of the guys regressed. In fact, one of my female friends regressed very hard because, well, to quote the great comic Stephen Wright, if you have everything, where would you put it? So if you have everything.
So is it just they had to? Do you think it's because they had too many choices, so you don't need to focus on everything, and just the focus gets split into a bunch of different pieces?
You don't have to think. If I was to say to you, as you're going to be my next elite athlete, but all you can eat out of is a crock pot. And here's what you need to have. Well, I'll tell you one thing. If you did that, you have to eat a crock pot of food a day. Well, you're going to probably every night at about 7:00, you're going to try to one up what you did the day before. And then the other thrower, the guy next to you, let's see, Mike, do you have a brother?
I don't. I have a sister. Yeah.
Okay. Your brother, Bob.
Okay.
Your brother, Bob, only has a George Foreman grill. That's every meal has to be cooked on that. At the end of the year, we switch. You guys are both better at everything than the person who had the whole gourmet kitchen, because you had to make decisions. You had to cut out. You got to remember, Mike, the word decide comes from the root side, to kill or to cut. Scissors. Suicide, homicide, fratricide, to cut. When you decide, you have to cut. And if I'm going to train, by the way, I love this idea. I'm going to have a national center where everyone has they have to cook for themselves. They've got a crock pot, and the only piece of equipment's a 28-kilo bell. But here's the thing about my secret thing. I will pay you $1 million if you train for a year and you improve. At the end of that year, we take those 100 people we put in this experiment and we sit down with every one of them and ask them what they did. Look at their journals, look at their diaries and all that stuff. I guarantee what we would learn from those 100 different people, this is a great study. We would learn things that have never been thought of in the world of throwing or lifting. Because we have put these constraints on them. By the way, all the food you want, but it has to be cooked in a crock pot. All the training you want, but only a 28 kilo bell.
Right.
In fact, no discus except for track meets, or no hammer. At the end of the year, well, of the 100, 5 would sit down and go, holy cow. And then 5 of them, we'd be sitting there with notebooks. And a few of them, I'd probably say 20%, would be like, I just got bored. Right. And then it'd be this middle group. Mm-hmm. But the 5%, the 5 would probably change performance athletics as we know it.
That's such an interesting idea, because about 2.5 years ago, I bought an Instant Pot and it completely changed everything in my life on nutrition. I probably saved thousands and thousands of dollars just from that one purchase right there, because you found a couple of recipes and started eating from home and completely changed my strength and nutrition in such a short period of time, but over the long haul from just doing that, because you can strain that down. That's such an interesting experience. That's what I was thinking of, like those 5% of people who now got through all of the normal stuff that you've heard over and over again into the really creative mind of what's going in. And that's where it's like, to be ultra creative and to really tap into that, you have to be in like that boring zone a little bit. Otherwise, like, you always have everything right in front of you at all times. You don't have to think about something new, because there's just going to be new information right in front of you. So take one kettlebell, one tool for nutrition, and do that for a year. Probably the first couple months is going to be boring. You'll get through, then there'll be a little bit of spot, but then all of a sudden a hole's probably going to open.
You said something that reminded me of one of my favorite, I'm pretty sure it's a Twilight Zone, where this guy is a total jerk. Okay. And he steals something and he gets into a shootout with the cops. When he wakes up, he's not in the hospital or jail. He's in this great place with women and food and booze, and they show him a few days into it, and he walks up to a slot machine and he pulls it and he wins the jackpot. So he talks to his handler and he goes, would it be okay if every time I pull the slot machine, I always win? And the guy goes, well, we could set it up that you don't win every time, but maybe every other time. No, I just want it to be more random. Oh, we can make it as random as you want. And he's walking around. There's always good looking women with him. Finally, a few days go by and he's trying to get away from all this stuff. And his handler walks up to him and goes, is everything okay? He goes, I just get a sense that I'd be, happier in the other place. And then all of a sudden the handler leans back and he's got devil ears and he's got a reddish face. This is the other place.
Oh God. That's creepy as can be.
So hell is winning every time at roulette. Hell is winning every slot. Mm-hmm. Hell is getting everything you want. And I've always used that kind of I taught it at certainly, it wouldn't be something you'd want to say in a strength and conditioning workshop, but I use it in my classroom a lot. And the idea is that when you just win, you don't progress at all. Hell is constantly getting everything you want. My father's curse, in fact, that was just funny. I was just writing about my dad. These are my dad's book reports from 1932.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he talks about he recommends that everybody read the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin. Okay. And he only got a C+ on that, but I thought it was good, but what do I know? And my father's curse was, I hope you get everything you want.
Yes.
That was his curse.
Oh, it is. Well, I think it might have been Milton. I might be missing that person, but somebody talked about that with Utopia Society, where if we're all sitting back and we're eating grapes and somebody's painting our toes, the first thing we would all do as a society is tear it all to shreds just so something happened. It's like the utopia of just everything just completely nice and everybody's like perfect and stuff. The first thing you would do if we have our actual human brain is to just knock everything down from there, just so something that we feel like there's a purpose of having.
I want to say that's Thomas More, but it could be Milton. But yeah, I know what you mean, but it doesn't matter. I mean, no, yeah. Yeah. So there you go. That's, to me, that's so it is the challenge of the constraints that makes minimalism for me.
I love that. And there's so many good stories about that. One of them, one of my, idols was Kobe, seeing his work ethic that he did. And I remember he said in one AAU tournament growing up, all he did the entire tournament over the summer was work on his left hand. Like he never used his right hand the entire tournament, because they had the 100 best basketball players that were young, and he was number 57 or something like that.
Yeah.
But he realized that he was still younger than most of the guys that were on top of him. So most of the guys that were up there, they were just relying on such natural ability, and they had one or two maybe good moves, and they knew that they could score on those moves. So they go to these AAU tournaments and they just kept doing the moves that they're already good at. And Kobe's like, no, I already know how to use my right hand. In this entire tournament, I'm going to use my left hand. Wow. And so by the time he kept building up, he kept building his arsenal around. So by the time he got to those guys' age, now he had a perfect right hand, and now he had a perfect left hand.
Yeah.
But to have the mindset at a young age to do that, like, all right, I know I can dominate this guy in front of me with my right hand and I could score 50 points. No, I'm going to put that behind my back and I'm just going to go on my right. But you're putting those constraints in there. And I think it's such a valuable lesson for everything. Even when we were talking about writing before, I found that by saying, all right, I only have 15 minutes to write this article. Like now it's like, okay, now you're getting stuff out. You're putting things out there. You can go back and edit it, but sometimes just having the free will and all the choice of all the time in the world to do it means that it's never going to get done, or you're just going to spend all this time just, diddling and dallying. And it's like, no, give yourself this short time.
You literally just summarized what Mike Brown and I have been talking about for a couple of weeks, really. So I did this contest that there's 14 words that have probably been around that almost every human would recognize. Worm or verm. Spit is another one that's the same, almost in it. The concept of thou, the holy other, a concept of smoke. And I offered this contest a few years ago, who could come up with the best poems just using those. Well, then we both started doing this. We took a course where it's very much like Dr. Seuss, where you have to write a 200-word essay story with only 50 words throughout the whole thing. Well, it's a constraint.
Wow. Okay.
It makes you think. When I was a teacher, I moved away from so much of other stuff, and I moved to what was called the one-page essay. My lawyer, Paul Burke, figured out this. He was one of the first kids to use computer word processor. He used the smaller font and got 57 sentences on the page. So Paul, he's now my attorney. So that makes
ingenious.
But the idea of the constraint is the key. So we're going to do a one-page essay. Well, what if it's 2? Then you fail. You get a 0. And it's 100 points. So you can turn in that second page or just rip it off and hope for the best. By the way, it might make a really good story. And of course, I think you got 5 points for putting your name. I had a whole system, silly stuff, but 5 points for putting your name on there. I think you got 10 points for one page. For every paragraph, you had to have at least 5 paragraphs. And I think he got, I don't know, a few points for it. It was a very boring system. But what I was trying to teach my students was the discipline of writing.
Right.
And the $1 million thing, and this, I've gone too far with this already, is that, Michael, I would read. So we're in a cohort together. I would read your paper to you. Talk about the best editing one can ever do is have someone else read their work to them. Oh, you would just see the students go, this isn't good. Mr. John, yeah, I didn't do a very good job in this. Yeah, we all know that. We all know you do. Can I do it again? Yes. And they would go home and do a better job. So I think it was, so the assignment would be due on Friday. I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday. I would read my paper to you and make appropriate edits. And then on Thursday, you would read my paper to me.
Okay. Yeah, because the dialect's going to change. You're going to probably highlight different words. So you start to see how it flows a lot more.
Well, in a run-on sentence, when you're doing it, I'm going to do a run. When you're doing a run-on sentence, when you say it out loud, it's not
right.
Okay, stop. I need to, or the who is he? So there were 500 of us went into a room. He walked in. Who's he? Whenever I'm tired, I always think about my friend. And okay. He is great. And it'll be just like these vague, there's this, use a pronoun, but you don't let us know who the damn pronoun is.
Right. Yeah. Right. It is.
Enough on that. Yeah.
No, it is. It's fine. I mean, just kind of, bringing this in, I think this is a really cool idea just in topic about minimalism and what really it is, where the constraint and the focus is really most important part of it. Yeah.
That's why there's a style of poem called Villanelle. And I think I have this right. I don't think it's a sestina. But Dylan Thomas said, do not go gentle that good night. Old age should rage and burn before close of day. Rage against the light. Well, it's a very systematic. It's like a sonnet. There's a strong system behind it. And the constraint of sestinas, villanelles, sonnets, limericks, haiku, is that you're forced as the author you have to follow. And if you don't, fine, then go do something else. But the constraints of those writing systems really force you as a writer to be better. Yeah.
Awesome. I love this stuff. So it's great. So I did want to shift gears because this was a great topic, but I do want to ask you about a couple things here. So one of the things that was a debate, got in a few people, is about this concept of perfect form on everything. Sure. So I had a video that went out recently. I was swinging a pretty heavy bell. It's a 56K bell. And the hinge in my swing is definitely a little bit different than if I had half that weight in there. Yeah. And it spurred a super fun debate with a lot of different people that are rolling in, where the concept was that your form should be the exact same regardless of the load in there of each thing. So
everybody's an expert until it's heavy.
Yeah.
So years ago, I cleaned 182.5 kilos, which is 402. And if you look at my feet, they're not in an appropriate squat pattern. And if you look at the way I stand up, my knees come in, my knees go out. I do all these terrible things because it's 402 pounds. So the online dork society would look at my right foot, because it was like my feet, instead of catching my feet like this, I caught it like this. Because when 400 pounds hits you, you get hit. You get underneath it, but it still hits you. It knocks you back or whatever direction it hit me. So when people do, I'll watch people critique online, and it's like, yeah, or they'll do their examples and they'll be doing these little drills, and it's like they have their little model who does everything perfect, and they do it. But when you meet the model, you realize that person could never compete at Division I, or hell, even in high school.
Right.
They're very good. They look good for a video online, but they don't look good in real life.
Right.
Yeah. So, so Joe Mills, the great Olympic lifting coach, said that if I can get you down to one mistake, you can be a champion, because everybody has flaws. One of the things about having a coach like Ralph Vaughn is that he had a technical model for every event, but then he allowed you to be you. LJ was taller than me and Glenn Passy. So LJ's technique, he could do it. He could do a thing or two. Well, Glenn was shorter than me, but explosive. So he could do, when you watch him throw, he is just so airborne, because that's what made his discus go farther.
Right.
And I was a blend between the two, very fast, very strong, large, but not large. You know what I'm saying? I was right. I was I was I'm the Goldilocks in the middle of this story. I'm the just right one. Okay. And, but Coach Mon had this, so we had some differences in our technical model, but it was based on our, the old phrase, you always dance with the girl who brung you. I mean, the girl who brung me was my fast twitch muscle fibers. And LJ is, this kind of person. And, Glenn Passy, extremely explosive athlete who was also a farm boy. So he had that weird farm boy strength.
Yep.
But the technical model was the same, but it wasn't. So when you're looking at technique, it's probably okay to have a flaw. I remember Mario Martinez, a good friend of mine, he got the silver medal at the 84 Olympics. He's no longer with us. He and I would say he and I were quite close. We competed in high school in the discus, and then of course as weightlifters. He was so much more blessed as a lifter. Well, he would clean and snatch with bent arms when it got to his knees. And every time he fixed it, his lifts would go down. But that was his only error.
Right.
And of course, his hands were the size of my mat. His hands were like John Stockton's hands,
Right.
And so his technical model wasn't perfect, but that doesn't mean you take the silver medal at the Olympics away from him.
Right. And, this is where it kind of got a little weird in my eyes, of where I was like, this debate is not fueling anything except for, just more fire for people to be talking about something. But I think when we start getting into these debates of like perfect form and perfect technique, I think that is hurting a lot more people than anybody thinks. Because if somebody sees that, I've had so many conversations with people who, I don't know if I'm doing this right. I'm not doing this right, so I can't do this.
Are you expecting me to disagree with you?
Yeah. Well, and it's like,
I'm serious. I mean, are you, because I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, no, it is. It's just, I think this is just something as coaches, that this is why we have standards of different things, right? It's because everybody's aesthetics are going to be, there's a couple of coaches that I follow that their aesthetic is absolutely beautiful. It's something to aspire to. Like I watch Denzel Allen and I see him move and I'm like, if I can move as graceful as him, swinging a bell or doing pull-ups, like that's what I'm looking to do. But it's this concept that you have to do things perfectly, that I think we just need to shy away from as coaches. And just like, if you find those standards, like that's the number one thing that we need to be aiming for.
Right. Yeah. You didn't have, you're good. You're fine with me. You don't.
Perfect.
I always think it's funny when someone comments on any technique I show online. I'm always like, okay, so yesterday when I did the kettlebell, the Turkish get up, the swing, I demonstrate all those. And today I'm demonstrating the snatch and the clean and jerk. And then here's the video of me flipping a caber. Here's the video of me throwing the discus. And you're bitching about some exercise. No one gives a shit about. My bent press technique is bad. Who cares about the bent? No one cares. There's probably 7 people in the world who care about the bent press. And I'm not one of them. So
that's one of those exercises. It's like there's a love-hate relationship with that. It's like, I think
there's no love-hate. There's 7 people who love it in the planet. So like, you realize no one cares. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think is that that was the topic too? I was going into like overrated exercises that some people value.
Well, let's wait on that. Let's what number is that going to be? How many more before we get there?
Well, we can jump into that at any time.
Okay. So for one thing, the bent press wouldn't be there because it's not rated. I mean, if I go to a Division I football program and start getting the athletes to do the bent press, everyone is going to have issues with me.
Mm.
So, however, if I show up and we drop the back squat, the front squat, prowlers, sled pulls, and all we do is move to a lunge variation, I'm going to have some people lean in and go, "Ooh, this is American football. The gentlemen need to be, no one gets slower during, no one gets smaller in a game. People get slower. We need them bigger." So for me, overrated exercise for me are pretty simple. They're all the ones I hate. Burpees, hate them. Mm-hmm. You're supposed to do 4. That's what Royal Burpee taught us, 4. Mm-hmm. Any more than 4 in your entire career is too many. Wasted. Jumping jacks. The bulk of calisthenics probably don't have a ton of value. But then I think about how we did them as a kid. And, those, the one where you put your hand, that they're called, well, there's cherry pickers, and there's the one where you stand like this, your right hand touches your left toe and you swing it back up. And if you take these seriously, they're big exercise. They're big movements. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because I was watching some stuff from the 1960s of people doing the classic calisthenics. And I thought, well, the problem isn't with the exercise, it's just the idiocy since then about how now we have to race. We used to do these 4-part toe touches, Mm-hmm. And the idea was to always come back to vertical. Every calisthenic we ever did, the idea was always to get back to vertical. And when people start to cut it, then you're just wasting your time. But I would say in my world, burpees are a waste of time. The bulk of calisthenics are a waste of time. Lunges, I think, have no value.
Well, let me steer you in one direction on that. So, because we mentioned
bodybuilder.
Yeah, we chatted before about the get up, which I think it's a great exercise, but used in different ways. And like heavy get ups is something that I think is definitely a really interesting debate about that. We kind of dove into it a little bit, but kind of left it a little bit open-ended one time in our chat. So do you think
on my YouTube channel, about once a month, somebody asked me about heavy Turkish get-ups, and I always say they're worthless and dangerous. They're dangerous. Mm-hmm. I had a guy he's famous because he dropped a 40-kilo bell on his chest on a Turkish get-up. So he got hit with 88 pounds in the rib cage. Folks, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that, he's lucky to be alive, because getting hit in the soft, if he'd have been hit in a softer tissue area or in a head area, we wouldn't have this. It'd be another gym tragedy. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, he hit his ribs and just broke a bunch of them. Do you hear what I just said? Of course, if you break ribs, and it goes into your lungs, that's a horrible way to die too. So, and what's the benefit of it? So everything I do is economics 101, cost to benefit, benefit. People ask me about double kettlebell snatches, and I would say, don't do them, because if something bad goes, you now have a loose bell above your head. Mm-hmm. One of the landing zones is your skull. So, and please, you would know that I'm not, I'm assuming, that I'm not like a safety psycho or anything, but it's just like, I don't see the benefit that you're getting from it.
Right. Yeah.
Like you did, this isn't a rip on you, but you did that plus 50-kilo swing. And I like the idea of starting a conversation with it, but as a training tool, I can't justify it. Mm-hmm. Snatch it,
okay.
Put it on a barbell and whip it over your head, Mm-hmm. You get to certain places in your training mm-hmm. where it's like, we have exhausted the value of this particular tool or exercise, and now we need to move on to something else. Yeah.
Okay. So, with the get up, because the get up's an interesting thing. It's a good exercise to work with, So
yes,
do you think this is one thing that I thought maybe is people don't do it slow enough?
Well, my friend Nick Lynch is who I have great respect for. He's out of Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. And he's got a couple of them that I have great respect for. I'm a big believer of putting now this is porcelain, but I would take a Dixie cup and mm-hmm. fill it halfway with water and doing your Turkish get-ups here. Mm-hmm. Big fan of that. Nick has an exercise where he starts standing. You inhale, and you do a Turkish get up, and at the bottom, and at the top, you exhale. And the idea on this is that you have to do it smoothly enough to not, because you're holding your breath.
Right.
A friend of mine, Chris White, has this drill he calls the 5-minute Turkish get up, where you set a clock and you have 5 minutes to do a Turkish. So you have, but here's the deal. You have to, something has to be moving the whole time. So you go, if you can waste a lot of time right here. But there are 2 or 3 transitions in the Turkish get up where by nature you go fast through. Well, and it's right around the kneeling windmill part. Okay, the kneeling windmill is when you have, if I have the bell in my right hand overhead, it's when my left hand, my left knee, and my left foot are on the ground in a straight line, and my right leg is off at 90 degrees perpendicular. Mm-hmm. That's called the kneeling windmill position. Well, when I hinge back and take my hand off, most people rush through that all the time. In the 5-minute variation, they suddenly realize that they need to get all that load, that the butt and the upper body back. They need to hinge the weight back so that they're safe coming around. And that by itself is worth the one time you might do the exercise.
Yeah.
So by putting artificial limitations on the Turkish get up, I think you get a much better exercise.
Yeah.
Taking us back to your first question.
I remember when I did the CKFMS workshop, Mark Chang put us through a version of that, of a slow progressive get up. I think it was like 3 minutes or so, and using a very, very light bell. And by the end of that, you had things in your body that were turning on that was different than anything. But as a structural exercise and realizing each movement counts, what I found is transitioning from the 3-point, that hand down, up to that half kneeling. And you really
we're in the same spot. We're in the same spot.
Yeah, pulled up in through the abs, because a lot of times you rush right through it. All of a sudden, that started to turn on some bells right there. So
try the Dixie cup. Combine the two. Try the 3-minute Turkish get up with a Dixie cup. What you'll discover is that your shoulders have no endurance, no local muscular endurance.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Because you're doing this for 3 minutes.
Yes. Oh, I'm going to try that. That might be a change too in just natural mobility as well, because the bell's not setting you naturally into that shoulder. So you have to really like.
Yeah. Well, and when you start to shake, because your hands went up there, you're gonna get water spilled on you. It's hilarious to watch people freak out when they get a glass of water spilled on them.
Oh, I love it. Oh, I'm definitely trying that. So
yeah.
All right. Well, Coach, I got one more thing I wanted to ask you about. Is the, with your experience as a master kettlebell instructor and instructing a lot of people coming in for, certs and working with the RKC, what are the things is there any common trait that people who come in underprepared seem like they're all falling in the same trap with?
Underprepared? Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny because I have people who come in over-prepared sometimes. Mm-hmm. Okay, let me break this. I have to break this out a little bit, okay, if you don't mind.
Please.
So there are people who come and I'll be at a cert and be like, I'm doing Brett Jones's 100 kettlebell snatch program. I'm doing Jeff Newport's, body by kettlebell. I'm doing, my friend, how do you say your last name, Mike?
Kurkowski.
Mike Kurkowski's, body weight Turkish
Polish kettlebell program.
Polish kettlebell, the Polish get up. I'm doing the blah, blah. And they have so many cooks making the meal that they're confused, and I'll correct something and I've had people say, well, that's not the way, X says it. And my thought is, well, see this little piece of paper here? That's the standard. You're supposed to be doing it. What he says or she says is not the standard that's on our test. Mm-hmm. Oh, so it's wrong? Well, I don't know if it's wrong, but it's not the standard that's on this test. And I'll just it's good to have like Jeff Hemingway there and Marco and Bryant and those guys who Taylor, Lacey, the people who often, are my assistants, because they can, especially if I'm getting pissed off. It's like, yeah, I was trying to be kind as I was explaining your failure to you. And now you're pushing back, and I showed you but there's probably three kinds of people underprepared. Number one, and this is the funniest one. Guy shows up, this crap, it's a gym guy, he's a gym rat, and he cut the sleeves off a shirt and he rolls them like this. And he's waxed his chest, for God's sakes. They're waxed. They got the big pecs. They've got it's pretty, there's been some use because they got that weird adult acne. So, and I'm just going to do this. I'm going to pass this thing. And they're not prepared. They don't know what a kettlebell is. They try to muscle through everything. And the truth is, I don't think you can do 100 dead hang snatches with the 24 in 5 minutes. So that's the kind where you just take it here. It drops straight down. There's no hinge, and you ricochet it back up, and in fact, so the number one is the gym rat who thinks he's badass. Mm-hmm. And if you're not humble when you're working with kettlebells, it's like the Olympic lifts. Well, I'm sure anybody who's involved in martial arts is going, yeah, coming to, step on my mat. They're probably just, that's why I could never be a martial artist. I don't have the humility to do it, Mm-hmm. But you show up at Highland Games with your, little, your local gym thing, and you think you're just walk in and beat me in the caber.
Right.
Yeah, it's not. It's not just the technique. You're not strong enough in the right places.
Right.
The second kind of person I would say that struggles is the person that sort of just misses the boat on. It's funny. It's almost like a paper. It goes back to remember the girl in school who always said, no one told me there was a test today? So, okay, class, on Friday, we have a test on, chapter 4 of the biology book. Tuesday, chapter 4 test. She shows up Friday. No one told me. Wait, I have to, the unprepared person, but by lack of academic integrity. They
didn't get the personal invitation.
Well, or so at the RKC2, I had someone say, well, I just thought I would, so I send probably close to 100 pages of additional information to you before you get there. So Mike, what do you weigh?
165.
Oh, 165. We'll just say exactly. So it's 164. So in our certs, there's a different standard if you weigh 149 versus 150. Okay. Mm-hmm. If you're a certain age versus a certain age. So it goes male, female. And then it goes, there's 3 age varieties. And then there's a ton of weight varieties, and it's different. So the RKC1 things, you have to use a 24, but in your pull up, because you're 165, you'd have to use a 24 kilo. Whereas if you weighed 220, it'd be the 60. Mm-hmm. And so I send you this thing in the mail and you're supposed to find your weight, age, circle it and know it, and then write it down. You get there. I'll have people go, well, I saw it. I just think I needed to open it. Well, I send out this massive thing on how to program kettlebells. They don't read it. So that would be the second. And the third really would be the person I used to joke about, the person who, they have the baseball cards, the kettlebell baseball cards. You know what I mean? They're fans.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
They come to the.
They know everyone. Yep.
So I was reading Zablotsky's book on secrets of the kettlebell. I was reading, and they're fans, but they didn't do the work. So we have the clueless, the lazy. to quote my old mentor, Monsignor Fitzgerald, the crazies, the lazies, and the daisies.
Oh man, it's fun. That's the second person in there. I just feel like I would just lie in that position. Oh yeah, I read it, and I would run to the bathroom and just open it up and read everything as fast as possible. Like, don't just say that. from there. But
yeah. I mean, so it does come down simply to preparation. I think anybody can pass the RKC cert, within, reasonable.
Yeah.
This weekend I was with one of my former athletes, Dave Blair, and he's an Olympic gold medalist and in the Paralympics. He's just a wonderful young man. And he was born with an issue with his leg. And so but he also competed at Weber State as a discus thrower with a leg, with a leg issue. Dave's a wonderful young man. And whenever we do something, Dave is always challenged because of this condition from his birth. And yet he never makes an excuse about it. So at a kettlebell cert, I'll have a guy like Dave who's like, he'll struggle in a goblet squat because he literally doesn't, but he'll fall, get back up and do it again and adjust. I mean, isn't that what we want? Isn't that what I want?
Yeah.
He's a no excuses guy. And it's just it's such a cliche to say someone inspires you. But what inspires me about Dave is he's got this full mug filled with a great excuse and he never uses it.
That's amazing. Those stories, they never get old. I mean, those are just the ones that we need to get out more and more. And it's like, it is a cliche from there, but to see somebody actually practicing it and going in 100% without using that excuse, even though it's right in front of you, right there that you can see it, and putting that out, that's just absolutely beautiful.
So for me, because this is going to sound full of myself, but even when I did the cert the first time, I wasn't like famous, but I was famous enough. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I knew I had to come in not just prepared, but
crush it.
Yeah. So, I did my snatch test at home in my tune-up with the 28 with an oven mitt on, and I passed it. Because and the funny thing is, when I did the cert, I just kept going, and the assistant, Missy, she said, yeah, you got your number and you kept going until you were finished with 5. And she goes, why'd you do that? And I said, I wanted there to be no doubt. Anytime, anywhere. I didn't want anyone going.
Well, no one told me to stop.
Well, he passed.
Oh, that's great.
I wanted to be like, yeah, dude's 57 and or whatever I was, just, what was that problem? I was probably 50. I was probably in my 50s, but I did all the standard open numbers, and I wanted people to walk away going, yeah, big engine.
Oh, that's awesome.
But what did I do? Just sit around, smoke dope all day? And, no, I busted my ass.
Yeah.
I was training on kettlebells 5 days a week to prepare. I was doing the rite of passage, but I was also doing other stuff, with Olympic lifting and loaded carries. And, so when I got there, I was ready to go.
Yeah. Do you see, like, now, just in your experience of, doing certs, are a lot more people now coming in over prepared and really, ready to roll? Or does it seem like it's pretty constant since you started?
Well, it would be your traditional fifths, I always joke about workouts. You have 1 out of 5 workouts is just an embarrassment. 1 out of 5 workouts is the one you post online,
That's it. Yeah.
And then 3 out of 5, you just kind of punch the clock.
Just punch that clock. Yep.
Yeah. So I would say, if we had 20, I can't do the math with 20. Help me out here. If we had 20 people at a start, 3, 4, 5 would be like,
dominating. Another 10 are coasting, and then there's a few that are.
Yeah, the assistants and I will be sitting around going, yeah, Mike, what do you guys think about Mike? I'd be like, Mike, Emily, Judy, Barbara, and Bob. What do you think about those 5? Oh, yeah, they're going to pass.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah. And what do you think about, Chauncey, I'm trying to find names that you would never use. Chauncey, Wembley.
Yeah, Wembley's had some problems.
Yeah, and we would it'd be like, and the assistants would be like, or there's always the one person who never lets me finish this. I have a question. One time I saw this. Okay, and then there's that middle group that just kind of fades from memory. They show up, they're fine, they do what they're asked to do. They're not horrible, they're not terrible. The book Scarecrow of Oz. Most people don't know that L. Frank Baum wrote 14 Wizard of Oz books. The first one was a political commentary, and the other 13 were money grabs, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. But in Scarecrow of Oz, he says, ordinary people are like leaves in the trees. They die and they fall off. I like the truly extraordinary people. And what you pick up at certs, especially in those kind of gatherings, is that you tend to remember the extraordinary, and the middle part the ordinary.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Dan, I think this was a success. This is awesome. Yeah, no, really appreciate you jumping on. It's always a blast to talk to you and to connect. And I think this was an awesome conversation, so much value, and really appreciate it.
Thank you. And remember to send me that link so I can share it with everybody. And
absolutely. And I'm sure we'll do this again soon, hopefully.
Yeah. I'm working on a new book, and I'm working on a whole bunch of new things in goal achievement. And maybe next time we can talk about that a little bit, huh?
I love it. Absolutely love it. And I think I always have to say every time I get a chance to speak to you, Never Let Go still is the best book I've ever read in strength and conditioning. So if anybody hasn't read that book yet, you have to go get that. It's a requirement of anybody who listens to this podcast. So
yeah, it's amazing.
Absolutely. So Dan,
thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. We will talk soon.
All right. Take care, my friend.
All right. Bye, guys.
Thank you so much for joining me today. If you like the show, please give it a 5-star review, give it a thumbs up, all that good stuff. And if you want to get the inside scoop on all new episodes coming up, behind the scenes insights, and free training resources, then you can join the Strength Connection private Facebook group now. Just go to Facebook groups, type in the Strength Connection, and join in. Also, don't forget to subscribe. See you soon.